Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is November 28th, 2018. When we're not here, you can always get our information by dialing our 800 number, 1-800-472-0391, or you can always go to weather.gov/Alaska and just click on the areas of your choice. Now, in just a few minutes, we're going to cover the weather for the aviation, public, and marine forecasts. And we have some very active weather as we head in towards the end of the week. So let's first cover what's going on today. We do have a winter weather advisory for blowing snow out there across the northern Arctic coast. The northwest coast here is experiencing some very strong gusty winds along with some light snow activity. And this is going to be reducing visibilities through 6 a.m. on Thursday morning. Now let's take a look at the upper level systems that are bringing the weather towards the state. First focus, we'll look out towards the west. We have a low pressure system that's moving towards the Alaska Peninsula, just south of Sandpoint during the afternoon hours. As you can see, this is a fairly quick pace system. And now here further to the west is the system that we're really going to have to watch as we head into Friday, because this is a very powerful strong storm system that's going to be bringing up some abundant tropical moisture with it. So let's go and look at what's going on across the southern tier of the state. If you take a look with me around the southern Gulf areas, we have a very weak spin, and this has brought some light snow activity into the southern mainland, but mainly just rain showers across the north and eastern Gulf. A few showers moving up into the southeast as well this afternoon. Some snow is continuing across the western Alaska Range north towards the Seward Peninsula to the northwest, all the way up through AKwx this afternoon. And we are getting a very strong easterly flow all across just north of the Brooks Range there for the coastal locations. Now let me take and put this into motion one more time. You can just see that most of the moisture is just across the mainland locations with we have a weak high pressure system out into the Gulf. Now if we look at the surface maps, here's that weak high pressure system. That's just ahead of the low pressure that's over Sandpoint, a 994 millibar low this afternoon. Pretty much the same weakness as the area of low pressure to the north, and they all have just some weak troughing across the state. So temperatures are cold enough for all snow across the western areas of the state. We do have some rain showers occurring along the northern Gulf with a changeover to snow as you head into the inland locations. And we do have some also light rain reporting just along the southeast for the afternoon hours, mainly colder just on the Canada side at this time. Now this low pressure system over the Alaska Peninsula, we have rain to the south of the peninsula with snow showers on the northern side of the peninsula. Across the central areas of the Bering, we're seeing a brief ridging that's giving a pause to the weather as this next system is bringing some very strong southerly winds gusting between 45 and 55 miles per hour this afternoon for Shemya, brings some rain over towards Adak. And then the low pressure system is currently a 980 millibar system this afternoon. Now let's take a look at the frontal boundary. It's an occluded system with a warm air mass that's streaming up ahead of the front with a very cold air mass being pulled on the backside. So that cold air mass is going to be making it through the overnight hours. However, with the system moving so quickly through the overnight, we're expecting snow across the Pribilof Islands with all rain to the west. So it's just going to be a brief cooling with a warmer air mass coming in behind. And then we're going to see a continuation of snow showers across much of the state. For the low pressure system that's across the Gulf locations, that is going to be a weakening as we head into tomorrow. Mainly for the southern locations, look for fog developing during the overnight hours. We'll also experience fog across the north coast and also down towards the Seward Peninsula with a weak troughing in those locations. And light snow activity will occur across the southern mainland. With low pressure, we have weak upper level waves moving, so we're not expecting much accumulations, but snow up to 1 to 2 inches will be on average for the mainland. We'll see mainly just fog conditions across the southeast for tomorrow, and some light showers are possible even with the ridging. Basically, we have weak ridging off to the east there, but with the upper disturbances moving from the west, we'll see that activity possible. Now for the west coast here, looking at a boundary sliding towards that coast during the afternoon on Thursday. So the low itself will be hanging back across the northern Bering and deepening to 974 millibars. That warmer air mass that you see initially come through along that subtropical jet is going to be followed by some wraparound cold temperatures. So this system is a very active system pushing into a cold air mass that's already inland. We're looking for a changeover fairly quickly across the southern Bering locations over terrain with a very strong gusty flow out of the south to west direction as the frontal boundary pulls through, looking at winds between 30 to 45 miles per hour as that front comes through. Then we'll see some strong westerly winds behind the cold front. Now let's take a look at Friday. That frontal boundary, there's still some uncertainty with this, but there's going to be a possibility for a rain and snow mix across Bristol Bay to the Kuskokwim and Yukon deltas. And it should eventually change over terrain, but like I said, there is uncertainty. There's going to be snow with this system at the onset, definitely changing over to rain for the southern Bering locations, and very strong gusts. Looking for Friday, gusts could get up to 60 miles per hour, especially across the Alaska Peninsula, Dutch Harbor. The strength of the system is still undetermined at this time, so that's expected to be changing. Otherwise, cold core low pressure system will maintain its strength across the western Bering. Ridging across the eastern borders of the state will bring some light snow shower activity and snow as we head into Friday night with that upper level disturbance coming through. Let's take a look at your temperatures. Some changes in the temperatures upcoming is going to be for the western locations, but for now we're going to see fairly cool overnight temperatures in comparison to the last few nights, mainly in the upper 20s to mid 30s across the southeast, and then across the interior down into the single digits to below zero across the north slope. West coast should be in the teens to lower 20s, and then across the Bering, look for temperatures dropping down into the lower 30s, and cool temperatures also tonight for the Alaska Peninsula. Slightly warmer across the central Aleutian chain in the upper 30s. And here's that increase in temperatures for Thursday afternoon, climbing into the 40s across much of the southern parts of the Bering, with temperatures starting to creep up towards the freezing mark for the southwest. So overall, temperatures are going to be cooler across the rest of the state, with single digits across the north slope, teens across the central interior, and Arctic Valley is going to be a little bit cooler there, and temperatures near freezing or just above across the North Gulf coastal locations, and in the upper 30s to lower 40s on the south on Thursday for the southeast. Now here's Friday morning, cooler temperatures than tonight. Temperatures across the southeast are even going to be dropping to near the freezing mark and below, with that ridge building out to the west. That cold air mass is going to be pulling into the southeast. So expect temperatures to be freezing and below. Coldest are going to be across the north and northwest coastal locations. And then for the southwest, this is going to be where you see the difference of temperatures starting to climb, with temperatures not dropping too much for your Friday morning as that front gets closer. Alaska Peninsula will stay in the 40s during the overnight hours, and then also out towards the west you can see those cooler temperatures moving back into Shimia. So here's the warming for Friday afternoon. Temperatures in the mid 30s across much of the southwest to mid 40s. Cooler temperatures stay in across much of the state until that front pulls across, and then a warmer trend with the southeast still getting up to near 40 degrees. So the north coastal locations will also be in the mid 30s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for the next several days. Let's just take a look here at the map, and you'll see that there's widespread MVFR conditions across much of the state, with areas of IFR as well along the Alaska Peninsula, out across the central areas of the Bering, and some locations across the northern tier and the eastern part of the state. Also notice along the northern Cook Inlet and Bristol Bay. Across the southeast for your Thursday morning, starting out with IFR conditions across much of the inner channels, and across the Gulf of Alaska, seeing widespread MVFR conditions also. Some improvement for the afternoon hours across the state. We are hanging on to those MVFR and IFR ceilings across the southeast, however. Now for the western tier of the state, some breaks in the sky conditions during the afternoon. However, IFR conditions are going to move across the eastern areas of the Bering towards the Alaska Peninsula and the Kuskokwim and Yukon coastal areas. Now let's take a look at your Friday. That front is going to be pushing in across the southwest and west locations. So IFR conditions along the west down towards the Alaska Peninsula, widespread MVFR to start out most of your day. North of the Brooks Range, however, they are expecting some VFR conditions after a busy week of staying down in the IFR and MVFR range. Now for the southeast, we'll see some breaks for you on your Friday as well during the morning hours, with the afternoon conditions across the southeast holding. However, much of the southern part of the mainland is going to be under IFR to MVFR conditions, with that break staying across the North Slope location. Now for the western areas, widespread MVFR will continue across much of the Bering. Now let's take a look at the passes in more depth. We'll start off with Anaktuvik Pass, which will be MVFR all day on Thursday, and Atigun will go from IFR to MVFR conditions. We'll see Lake Clark go from MVFR to VFR during the afternoon or late afternoon hours. And we'll see Rainy Pass stay in that MVFR condition all day. Thursday for Windy Pass will be MVFR going down to IFR. And Isabel will trend the same way, MVFR to IFR. And Mentasta will stay MVFR all day. Tanita will go IFR to MVFR during the late afternoon. And then Portage will go IFR to MVFR early day. Looking at Chilkoot and White Pass, expect IFR conditions all day on Thursday. Now let's take a look at the freezing levels for your Thursday morning. We have the surface freezing level draped off across the northern parts of the Panhandle and the northern Gulf coastal locations, and back up north towards the northern areas of the Bering, with a climb of heights from 2,000 to 4,000 feet across the central Aleutians and south. And the 2,000-foot level is pretty much draped across the southern areas of the Bering into the southeast. For your icing concerns on Thursday, we're looking at widespread icing across the state with low pressure about the area, with freezing concerns above 4,000 towards the southeast and mainly at above 2,000 feet across the remaining locations of the state, up above 3,000 out towards the western Bering. Let's take a look at the low pressure systems out there. We have troughing over the western Bering, a little bit of a weak ridge, very strong jet stream, max of 160 knots out there to the west, with somewhat of an amplified pattern here across the Gulf waters, and then a ridge just off to the east along the Alcan border there. Now at the 9,000-foot level, we're looking at ridging to the west, but we have low pressure that's encompassing all of the state of Alaska and the Bering to the west. The larger low is out towards the west with a westerly 50 to 60 knot wind just to the south of the low center. And then we have mainly an onshore flow component across the state between 20 and 40 knots, the strongest winds across the southwest for Thursday, and then a lighter wind speeds for the southeast out of the southwest at 10 knots. Very similar at the 3,000-foot level with the onshore flow component. Low pressure to the south, ridging to the north of the North Slope, so a little bit of a speed max there across the northwest at 25 knots. And around the winds around the low pressure center to the west is going to be the strongest, with 55 knots across the west coast during the afternoon for Thursday. So to sum up all the turbulence, main concerns are across the west coast and out towards the Bering, below 6,000 to 3,000 feet along the southwest.
On March 11, 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the Pacific coast of Japan generated a tsunami. This series of ocean waves sped towards the island nation, with waves reaching 24 feet high. The result was devastation and utter destruction. Towns were engulfed by water and swept away. Farmland was flooded. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. The National Police Agency reported damages to hundreds of roads, bridges, and more than 100,000 buildings. The surging water flooded rivers and destroyed harbors. In some areas along the coast, tsunami waves reached 6 miles inland. Tsunamis not only cause severe damage when they first strike land, but also as the water recedes back to sea. Tsunamis can inflict this type of damage because of some unique features. As tsunami waves travel across ocean basins, they may be as little as a few centimeters high, but they extend down to the ocean floor. This is different than traditional waves, which are only surface features. Tsunamis can also travel hundreds of miles per hour in the open ocean. As these waves approach a coast, the shallowing ocean floor slows the waves down and pushes the water mass upwards. The quicker the ocean floor transitions from deep to shallow, the greater potential for a higher wave height. So, tsunamis that experience this sudden shift into shallow water can have the height and momentum to pack a serious punch. Unfortunately, Japan found itself in this scenario. This image shows how abruptly the Japanese islands rise out of the ocean. Other coastal areas in the region have much more gradual slopes. The earthquake on March 11th was the most powerful known to hit Japan, and the tsunami it created had the necessary ingredients to make it such a deadly and destructive force. "80 miles east of Japan, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake rocks the ocean floor. This disturbance causes a transfer of energy from the seafloor to the ocean, generating a series of ocean waves, known as a tsunami. In about 20 minutes, waves strike the Japanese coastline. Other nations go on high alert because the tsunami will propagate or spread throughout the Pacific Ocean. As the tsunami radiates outward from Japan, it encounters a variety of ocean features, such as ridges and underwater volcanoes, which guide the tsunami and create a complex pattern of scattering and reflective waves. In 8 hours, the waves reach the Hawaiian Islands, and in 9.5 hours, they hit the west coast of the United States. In 16 hours, the tsunami reaches the Indian Ocean and New Zealand, and by 22 hours, the entire Pacific Ocean had been affected. The impact of a tsunami can be highly variable because of the complicated interactions with ocean features and coastline elements. Wave height and speed will differ from place to place. Since tsunamis can be hundreds of miles long and travel thousands of miles away from where they originated, they are considered a worldwide threat when they form. These are the sounds of a tsunami warning. They alert residents that a killer wave is about to strike. These sirens, however, are just a small part of the sophisticated warning systems that played a role in Japan and in the US during the Pacific Ocean tsunami in March 2011. Most tsunamis are generated by an undersea earthquake. Fortunately, Japan has one of the most advanced earthquake early warning systems in the world. It detects tremors, calculates the epicenter, and sends out warnings from over 1,000 seismographs scattered throughout the country. The Japan Meteorological Agency issues the warnings and sends alerts to television and radio channels, the internet, and mobile phone networks. When the earthquake struck 80 miles offshore, warnings were generated in about 3 seconds. The tsunami warnings came 3 minutes later. These take longer because more complex calculations are involved and must factor in ocean data. Since the first tsunami wave struck the coastline within 20 minutes, the advanced warning provided some residents with crucial minutes to reach a safe area. While the earthquake sent powerful tsunami waves westward toward Japan, the tsunami also propagated east into the Pacific Ocean. Here, warnings are issued by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, operated by NOAA in Hawaii. NOAA maintains a large network of buoys with ocean floor sensors that are strategically positioned in the earthquake-prone zones of the Pacific. This system collects vital ocean data for tsunami forecasting. On March 11th, only 25 minutes after the earthquake struck, the first buoy station measured the tsunami and relayed information to Hawaii. Scientists used this data to run models and issue forecasts and warnings to nations throughout the Pacific. From there, local emergency managers decided what actions were appropriate to take for public safety. The earthquake and resulting tsunami devastated the Japanese coastline, causing damage that will take years to repair. While we can't prevent these forces of nature from happening, our early warning systems can help us prepare for the dangers headed our way.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, and now on to the marine portion of the show. We're going to first take a look at the ice edge, and for November 28th, the ice edge, we're seeing some growth potential in the next day or two across mainly Kotzebue Sound up in the Chukchi Sea area. Across the Bering, we are going to see a southerly flow develop, so not much growth is expected across the west coast. Now let's take a look at the southeast, the forecast as we head into Thursday. Primarily a northerly flow across the area between 5 to 20 knots, and we're going to see seas on this day around 2 feet across the inner channels and then 7 to 9 feet across the outer waters. As we head into Friday, still not much in the way change of winds between 10 to 20 knots out of the north direction. Seas on this day will be between 2 to 4 feet, and then the outer waters will be between 8 to 10 feet. Let's take a look at the north coast, North Gulf Coast, and along the Kenai, we'll see winds primarily from the north direction, and we'll see the Kenai also northerly flow down through the southern inlet there. Seas on this day are going to range between 2 to 6 feet. With the highest seas across the Gulf. And as we head into Friday, a little bit stronger winds picking up there across the southern tip of the peninsula. Small craft advisories between 25 to 30 knots with lighter winds across the Sound and the northern inlet between 10 to 15 knots. A little bit change of a wind direction out here across the Prince William Sound and more of a westerly flow there across the northern Gulf and a change to the south direction here at the tip of the Kenai. Now let's take a look at your southwest across the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, a little bit lighter winds, 15 to 20 knots on the eastern peninsula side, and then 30 to 35 knots on as you head towards Cold Bay. Looking at those strong winds developing along the front, seas will be between 4 to 12 feet, and then on Friday expect even stronger winds moving up with 40-knot winds there, so gales increasing with gustier conditions late day. And then we'll see seas between 9 to 15 feet on the Bering side and between 13 to 18 feet on the North Pacific side, and winds across the Shelikof Strait, Kodiak Island are going to be increasing to small craft of around 30 knots out of the south and west direction. Now look at the Thursday forecast for the eastern Aleutians. Strong gale force winds out there, 35 knots and 40 across the central Aleutians towards the western chain. Looking at small craft advisories there, 25 knots out of the west direction. Seas on this day are going to range between 15 to 20 feet. And then looking at your Friday forecast, strong winds persisting, stronger towards the eastern Aleutians there at 40 knots. Gale criteria out there with seas up to 25 feet. And then towards the west, wind speeds will be a little bit lighter, 25 to 30 knots westerly direction, small craft, and then we'll see seas between 10 to 18 feet. your west coast for Thursday is going to be, here's that southerly flow I was talking about, between 35 to 40 knots. So gales for your Thursday and into Friday, possibly a little bit lighter wind speeds early in the day, increasing late days. So this should get you through about 4 in the afternoon, and then they'll start increasing, possibly gusty during the day, about 10 to 15 knots higher. And then seas on this day will be between 9 to 12 feet. For your north slope area back towards the northwest, looking at wind speeds between 15 to 30 knots, and primarily out of the easterly direction for these locations. And then we'll see on Friday, we'll see 15 to 30 knots as well, same directional areas, seas in ice-free waters between 5 to 8 feet on both days. Also, freezing spray is going to be a concern across the northwest coastal areas in ice-free waters. Now let's take a look at the recap of your forecast as we head through tonight. Expect some light snow showers across much of the state with low pressure remaining in control. The low over the Alaska Peninsula will begin to shove towards the east, so just rain around this system, a little bit stronger gusty winds on the backside across the peninsula, and gusty flow coming in along the front that'll impact the entire area during the next several days. The southeast will see some fog as well as the north, with some light showers in both areas. As we head through your Thursday, lighter shower activity, but still persisting across much of the state, with a system to watch in the bearing approaching the western coast. As we head into Friday, that's going to spread precipitation challenges inland, possibility for snow, rain, and freezing rain. Now for the southeast, they're going to stay on the drier side into Friday. Thanks for staying with us, and I'll be back with you tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.